right, friends, welcome back to the Nerdcast from Project Nerd. It's your friend Tyler, and we are here with a brand new interview. Christen Stovall, author of the Song of Souls trilogy, as well as the upcoming prequel, The Twisted Path, is joining us. They're great books, fantasy series. If you haven't had a chance, pick them up. I would definitely say The Twisted Path is a prequel to the Song of Souls trilogy. The Song of Souls trilogy, been out for a while now, but a really fun story. But here is our interview with Christen Stovall. All right, nerds, welcome back to the Nerdcast. It is your bud Tyler. We are here for an exciting interview. I've got Christen Stovall here. She is the author of the Song of Souls trilogy and the upcoming prequel to the Song of Souls, The Twisted Fate. I can't talk. Christen,
Twisted Path.
Twisted Path.
Yeah.
I'm awful at everything tonight. But hey, Christen, thank you for joining us, and correct me for all the bad things I say. So
It's all right. I'm happy to be here. I mean, you should see some of the typos that I get into things. So
when was the last correction made on the book that's coming out?
the last correction made was maybe last week. We caught a last minute thing that had to be. No, it was this week. We caught a last minute formatting issue that had to be fixed.
Yes.
The end of a chapter, for whatever reason, the text started halfway down the page, and I'm like, it's not supposed to look that way.
Listen, and then you caught it, so it's all good.
We caught
so
it. Yeah. It was actually my mother who caught it.
is this the closest to release that you've still been making changes to a book?
Oh no.
No.
This is the most prepared I've been.
Ever been? There you go.
Yeah. With the other ones, there always seemed to be bigger technical issues that were like a go back in and look at the cover again and talk to the cover. I mean, this was just a little tiny tweak. We just went into the manuscript and they figured out why it did that. So
just some formatting stuff, not having to.
that's just a little tiny formatting issue. I will
So-
take that over what happened in other books so much.
Does it get easier now that we're 4 in?
You know, it does. I mean, there are different elements that are harder or easier with each book. So in some ways it's apples and oranges, but I've learned the technical end of things, so I know what to give them and I know what not to do when I'm giving them a manuscript with the formatting. So this one was easier.
So for those who aren't familiar with the Song of Souls trilogy, what's your elevator pitch? Because this is a prequel to your first trilogy, right?
Yes. Well, the Song of Souls trilogy centers around a young woman named Aislinn who all she ever really wanted was a quiet life, raise her family in this quiet village in the corner of the kingdom of Vanalis. She met the love of her life and married him, and it was going to be perfect. And then he was tragically killed. And she discovered that even though he was gone, she could still hear and see him because their souls were connected. They had formed a bond, and she was what was known as a soulbound. So she goes off to a city to be trained in that, and because of that connection, can perform magical healing. And you'd think, okay, that's enough. She's gonna be fine, right? No, I'm too mean for that. She ends up sort of thrown into a situation that is so much bigger than her, that deals with the safety of the entire kingdom and ultimately the entire world. And she's the one that has to kind of go in and see if she can fix it with the help of some good friends and her soulmate.
That sounds pretty exciting. I definitely now I'm intrigued. Now I want to read it. Do we need? So you've got the new one though that we've got coming out. The Twisted Path is a prequel to this. Do I need to have read the trilogy to read the new book?
No, I've actually written them so that they can be read separately. The prequel takes place about 200 years before, and while they do tie in, they tie into one another sort of the way The Hobbit ties into The Lord of the Rings, in which there are connections, there are things that bring the stories together, there are things that happen in The Twisted Path that do impact the trilogy, but they're very much separate stories, and the characters, except for one character makes it into the trilogy 200 years later. But mostly they're very separate stories. They can be read in either order. I'm interested to see what the impression would be from someone who reads the prequel first and then the trilogy, because right now most of the people I already have as readers will have read the trilogy, obviously, because that's all I have out. I can word much better in books, I swear.
I definitely now I will have to read them out of order now. That's definitely my new plan. So, not
Awesome.
out of order, in prequel order, in chronological order, as they say in the trade. There
All
you go.
right, sounds good.
But yeah, so I mean, like fourth book written, we were still making changes, obviously technical changes up to the last
Yeah.
minute, but it's release time. We're this close to the finish line. How are we feeling?
Yes. Pretty good. Pretty good. Calmer than I have ever felt this close to a release before. Usually there's a lot of panic and stress and me just freaking out and not sleeping, but it's been pretty relaxed. And I'm even working on another book series with someone else. So I've been doing all of that while getting this ready. I don't know how I'm this calm.
And
Wine.
that's there you go. I mean,
Wine helps.
that'll cure a lot of ills.
Yeah.
That's the Fey Touch Chronicles, correct?
Yes, the Fae Touched Chronicles. And we're hoping to get the first book out in February. So that's coming right up too.
Staying busy, staying busy.
Oh yeah, it's the way I like to be.
There you go. So other than, I mean, I know we've talked earlier before the show started about all things nerdy. We talked specifically about bookstores because I love bookstores, and you happen to live near a bookstore that's one of my favorite bookstores because I'm also from Kansas, the Ad Astra bookstore in Salina, Kansas.
Yes.
Tell us a little. I mean, what makes a bookstore, perfect?
Well, I like when they have personality. I really like when they're not in a sort of traditional building. Ad Astra is, but it's an older building, so it has some character. It has that kind of magic to it, you know. There's one in Wichita called Eighth Day Books that's in an old house, and it's just that one is so cool. But I like them to have their own little unique character where it looks like you could find a doorway into Narnia or something, you know, just that little touch of magic.
Yeah, that's the weird little corners and nooks and crannies and shelves that are a
Yes.
little too uncomfortably tall. Like I can't quite reach the top shelf, but there's no
Right.
ladder anywhere. I don't know how I'm supposed to get the books up there or how they got up there in the first place.
Exactly. And you're pretty sure if you climb that bookshelf, it's gonna fall or you're gonna
It's
get yelled at.
yeah, but I really want that book that's up there. I don't know why they put it there, but I
Exactly.
need it.
It's like the light shines down on the one book.
So, as someone who is a writer, but also obviously an avid fan of books and bookstores and stuff like that, I know it's a trite question at best, but is there anyone in particular that any one author, any one book, any one series that like when you put it down, you decided not only do I want to do that, but I can do that.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings,
Yeah,
Tolkien, The Hobbit.
Tolkien.
I mean, there's a ton of books that I like. But the very first time I actually sort of seriously started writing when I was in my late teens and putting together stories, it was messing around in the fan fiction world for Lord of the Rings, but I never wanted to write about the main characters. I wanted to pick like these little characters that get mentioned and then you never hear anything else about them. And that's when after a while, I realized you don't want to write somebody in someone else's world. You want to write your own world.
Who's the most obscure Tolkien character that you've written about?
Oh gosh, probably Orphan, one of the Haldir's brothers.
Okay, it's a
Yeah,
deep cut.
yeah. He's. I don't know that he's really in much of anything else. Like, oh, he's just sort of mentioned as one of Haldir's brothers, and I could be totally wrong. Like, somebody could listen to this and nail me to the wall and be like,
Be
"Yeah,
like,
but he
no, no,
was
no,
in
no.
this thing." I'm
Yes,
sorry if I
and
have lost some Tolkien cred.
there's an appendix in the Silmarillion that goes into so much detail about him. No, I don't know, but
I have the Tolkien illustrated encyclopedia that someone gave me for Christmas, so I suppose I could look it up.
yeah, it's fine. Listen, I don't think. I mean, here's the thing: it's the internet. Someone's gonna fact check it, but no one really
Oh yeah,
cares that much. Like,
I mean, if they care enough to look at that, I guess like good
I'll
for you,
take
man.
take
You
take.
have a
I'll
passion.
there you go. Well done. Well done. I mean, I love Tolkien. I've read the books. I've made it through the Silmarillion more than once, but at the same time, like I am still I can make the references past the layman level, but anyone who is like a real Tolkien scholar who can recite a piece of a poem or say something in Elvish, my hat is off to them. They are a different
Yeah.
breed. And here's the thing, I make fun. There's definitely things within nerddom which I can do the same thing, but
Oh yeah.
Tolkien was almost. I mean, as much as I love it, I think the learning curve there's a little steeper than
It's
I
a
think I can
lot.
handle.
It's a lot. I do have a tattoo in Elvish, but
There you go.
in Cinderin, I believe.
If I'm
I
going to
know
be,
enough to know which language it is and that it says friend.
there you go.
So.
I mean, that's 3 steps out of the game. You have, I mean, your cred is secure in that case.
Yeah, I got it inked. There we go.
You have permanent Tolkien street cred in that case. So
Yeah, I got a matching tattoo with my friend because we were both into Lord of the Rings, and ooh, that's cool. She
yeah,
has
I don't.
many more tattoos than I do. I have the one.
If you're only going to get one, Tolkien's a good one to have.
And I might get another one later. It just hasn't
There you
happened
go.
yet.
I don't know if I would author. I don't know if I'd do an author bait. I don't know. Maybe a Pratchett. Maybe a turtle. I could do a turtle. I could do that.
Yeah, you could do that. A turtle would be
That'd be fun.
cool. Yeah, fun reference too.
Yeah. That, I mean, if I'm doing my Mount Rushmore, I mean, Pratchett's probably always number one, but Tolkien's definitely up there as well.
Yeah. Juliet Marlier is probably my number two, but she's not as well known in the sort of mainstream. But I like her a lot.
What has she written?
She's written, I mean, she's written a lot, and
Lot.
I've gotten just like the tip of the iceberg. I really, really love her Seven Waters series, and it takes place in medieval Ireland. And the first book is basically the fairy tale The Six Swans, but told from, the perspective of a young woman in ancient, well, not, medieval Ireland, and with adult themes and everything. And then it goes generationally. Although as she got further along, sometimes it was siblings within the generation, but it usually is generational.
That's fun. Those are
Yeah.
always things that kind of have that through line through it are always a lot of fun to read. So
Yeah, we're playing with the idea of doing that to some degree with the Fey Touch Chronicles. We have 4 books that we have like the base, which are Seer's Choice, Healer's Touch, Lady of the Lock, and A Matter of Time. And those are our first group, and they're all kind of the same generation. And then we're thinking about doing some more with like their children. So we'll see. We need to get the first one out.
there you go.
I have
How
many ideas.
how different, easier / harder? What are the pros and cons of when you're having someone who's written a number of books now on your own, writing, with another person, with a partner?
I'm very lucky in that the person that I'm writing this with, I actually wrote with before I ever even put a book out. In fact, we had some of these stories written and we just wrote them for fun. It's easier in some ways, harder in others. It's easier in that it's not all on me. I don't have to do all of it. I don't have to think of all of it. It's harder in that I have to consider that there's another person with thoughts and opinions. And sometimes they're right and I have to just say they're right because I know they are. But she brings amazing things to the table. Her name is Jennifer Sanders, and she's got some books out as well. And she's just really talented, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be writing with her. We've been friends for like 20 years now, so I'm so excited about it.
How's the division of labor on that sort of thing work? Is it you write this bit and I write this bit, or we pass the book back and forth until we reach the end?
It's really kind of fun and interesting the way that we do it. We have characters that we helm. So there's always an element of romance in it. So if one of us is writing the lead heroine, the other one will write the hero. And in the first book, she writes the guy and I write the girl, and then we switch places and I write the guy and she writes the girl, and then we pick up various different characters, so it's not all just on one person. So we'll get in like a Google Doc or something that we can both see it in real time, and like we'll just back and forth. And so it's almost like we're in character and typing back and forth to each other. It's a little bit of an RP thing. So it's really fun. It's a lot of fun
Okay,
to
so
it.
because you're playing a 2-player a mud over here, just having a little RP session. I love it.
Yeah. And then we have to go in and make sure it's like technically right and and that we didn't just go off on a tangent, because that does happen.
Yeah. That's why the editing process exists. So it's all right.
Exactly. So, but it's pretty well divided, and she isn't able to do this full time like I am, so it's kind of changed my work schedule because I try to keep sort of business hours, but now I have to be conscious and aware of her other obligations and her hours. So it's actually forced me to take breaks sometimes. This weird thing called breaks. I don't know.
It's probably not the worst idea in the world.
I'm one that I will work myself into a point of anxiety because, it's what I'm passionate about. So I'll get in the headspace and forget that there's another part of the world that's not in my head.
When it's all said and done, after role playing it back and forth, polishing here, adding a bit here and here, when you're done with it, could you sit and look at it and be like, that's my bit, that's her bit? Or does it all become eventually one cohesive, kind of like, I couldn't tell you which bit of this was mine?
Well, I know generally, if it's one character saying it, then I know that it was me or her.
Mm-hmm.
But I have told her, as you go through it, you can change stuff a bit so that the styles just match seamlessly with each other, with one another. And there have been a few bits where like it'll be description or a character that we trade back and forth, and then I'm like, did she do that or did I do that? Because I'm not sure anymore. And she was somebody that was there and had already been writing for a long time when I was developing as a writer. So I think there are a few little stylistic things that I had just sort of picked up from her in the first place.
You
But
can
that being said, we're
meld
both always
together
like,
well.
you get it way better than I do. And yeah.
That's always, I mean, I feel like that's always an interesting question. I know like a lot of authors have different answers to it, but it's like, I don't know any authors who aren't avid readers, but at the same time, I do know authors who are like, at a certain point, I had to stop reading things in the
Mhm.
same sphere as stuff that I was working on because if you're an avid, you absorb so much, you stick so much inside your head, and next thing you know, you've accidentally reused a turn of phrase or you've used
Right.
an expression or
Right.
something. You're like, or you've realized, oh, I just like musicians do the same thing. You're like, I just rewrote half of a story from someone I read 10 years ago that I had forgotten was inside my head. Have you
Yeah.
found yourself less and less able to read kind of fantasy books for pleasure and you're just sitting there
Um,
doing the math on it?
I usually, if I'm in the process of writing a first draft and really like in the nitty gritty of editing, I don't read a whole lot. But once the book is out, then I usually give myself a little break and I'm like, I'm gonna read. And then I go to books I've already read anyway. I'm gonna read this thing for the 50th time because I like it. I'm a rereader. I'm really bad about being a rereader and not getting new stuff.
I have only recently discovered like I think the pleasures of rereading. Like I was talking about Pratchett earlier, like Pratchett's one of the few authors, like just because I'd miss stuff and you'd pick up new jokes and things, but I was never
Yeah.
someone who could read a book more than once. Like I was like, I already know what happens. There's no surprises. And then the world shut down for like a year and a half, 2 years. And I was like, oh, I have all this, I'm working from home. I have all this time. I'm going to read so much new stuff. I read practically nothing new. I watched almost no new media. I just rewatched old shows and I reread old books and I realized, oh, there's from even just like the comfort part of it obviously is a big part of it, but
Yeah.
just like I have now since become a convert. I understand. Before I couldn't understand. It's like, why would you read something? Why you could read something new? Why would you read an old book? And now having reread so many books in the last 2 years, I definitely get it. So
I get really attached to characters and then I'm not ready to say goodbye. I have in fact finished a book and then gone, nope, not ready, and just picked it up and started over again.
I
I'm
definitely
not ready to say goodbye.
yeah, that's the one of the best slash worst feelings in the world is finishing a book and it just being like knowing it's over and then because especially when it's like something I can't put it down and then you realize oh there's only a few pages left I can't handle this not you know being
Yeah,
done.
you get attached to the world and the characters, and then when you finish it, there's like this moment of silence, and you're like, I'm not going back into that world tomorrow. I'm not gonna spend time with these characters, and I always have like a little moment of book mourning where I'm just sort of sad for a week because the book is done.
Right, what's
I went
the
through that when I finished the trilogy. I was sad that it was done because I wasn't coming back to those characters to my knowledge. I don't know. Stories might come
one
up, but to my knowledge, I'm not coming back.
never know
Yeah.
but at least you've gotten to go back to the world. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I knew about, and I keep pointing back here because the book is back there, and I'm like, I don't know if they can see it. it 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 was helpful. I knew that I was going to write the prequel. I knew some of the stuff even from the beginning of writing the first book, Soulbound. But it was totally different. I had to relearn the characters, and it's 200 years in advance, so it's a very different point in that world. Like the kingdom itself is incredibly new. It's still with its very first king. So yeah, that's not particularly stable, you know. So yeah, but it was helpful. It was very different. In some ways I had to relearn it a little bit.
Is there any plans to continue like the story of the Twisted Path, or is it a one and done? You've told the story there that needs to be told.
Twisted Path is one and done. I do have more stories I want to do in the universe that take place after the trilogy, but the focus is on different characters. They're completely new characters to that. So some of the old ones might make cameos. I was mean, so I feel like I have to give them a break.
You had to give them a break. That's fair.
I was way meaner in Twisted Path, though.
Meaner in Twisted Path than okay,
oh yeah.
That's fair.
There was a pandemic going on. I had stuff to work out. I wrote the nearly 600-page manuscript in 3 months.
Okay, you definitely had some words to get down.
I had some words to get down and nothing else to do.
Yeah. Was that the fastest or the most you've written in a short period of time before?
You know, considering the length of it, it probably is the most. I know that I wrote the second book pretty quickly, but I don't think I wrote it that quickly. But the editing process took longer on this one just because there's so many little intricacies, and it's a little less of classic fantasy adventure, and there's a little bit of political intrigue in it and things that have to fit just right. So it was very meticulous in making sure that all worked out the way it was supposed to.
It's fantastic. I'm excited. The more that you talk about it, I'm excited to finally sit down and read it because I like the. I love. I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm a sucker for a world and like let's tell a story and let's tell the same story and let's go books, and then I'm 14 books in and like let's keep the series going. But as now I've got to the point where it's like, no, sometimes it's nice to have a book that when you finish the book is over and it doesn't end. Not every book has to end on a cliffhanger. I feel like, I don't know. I definitely love a good series. Like just give me more books of the same character over and over again sometimes. But then other times I'm like, nope, I need this to. Sometimes it's refreshing to just read a book and have it be the end of the book.
Yeah, sometimes it's good just to read the book and have that the resolution at the end. I'm one of those that like I can usually make it through about 4 or 5 books, and then after that I'm like, okay, now you're just stretching it out. Like answer
right?
this thing that you started in the first book and seem to have forgotten, but occasionally hint at just to drive me insane.
There's definitely a lot. It's funny because there's some series, that I'm notoriously bad for. I'll pick up a series that's halfway through and read the first 10 of the or 5 of them in like a week and a half, and then it's like, well, now I have to wait a year for the next one. I'm not going to do that. But then there's also
like binging Netflix.
Exactly like that. Oh, right now the big one is I've had a lot of friends who know that Once Upon a Time I read Wheel of Time, who are watching the show being like, hey, should I read this book? And I'm like, that's a big question and I don't know how to answer it. Yes, but you can skip like 3 of them in the middle because nothing happens for 1,200 pages.
I started reading it and could not get into it. I need to try it again. Maybe I was just not at a good point in my life for it and it wasn't connecting for me. I haven't watched the series yet. I'm like, I couldn't get into the book, so
It's a tricky one. I definitely remember reading it and getting quite a ways, and then just like it does just grind to a halt somewhere in the middle, and then not picking it up for years, and then it finished after he had died, and Brandon Sanderson came and finished it. And I was like, I guess I'll give it another shot, and then I reread it all the way through and made it to the end, and that middle part was still rough. But it's one of those things.
Was the payoff at the end worth going through that middle part?
Yes.
The answer was not an immediate yes. It was.
Yes. The payoff was the ending was incredibly cathartic. The problem was there was just so many threads left dangling. There was no way they were all going to get tied off satisfactorily, but enough of them did. But it's notoriously dense, not dense, but it's like by the time you get to the end of the book, you've had 2,000 plus name characters. You're 14 books deep. I read the book. Yeah. I read the first book almost a decade after it came out when I was in junior high. I can't imagine people who started it, but I read the first book in 1997 and the last book came out in 2012. So it was 15 years from book 1 to book 14.
Yeah.
And there were definitely people who had a longer slog of it than I did. So
I suppose that's better than what Game of Thrones fans are with the book series,
Though, I
especially
mean,
after the
that
way the
series,
series ended. Like now they're all like, please tell me this was not real.
yeah,
It
that
was
one's
too.
it's one of those tricky ones because yeah, it's as someone who's read those books, like it sucks. At the same time, like no author is at the. I mean, you know what? If he doesn't want to finish, he doesn't have to finish it. But it does suck. Same thing.
It
It's
does
like I
feel a
know.
little bit like he's sort of inspirationally done with it, but
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm Game of Thrones should be right up my alley. It should. Like by everything else I'm into, it should be something I'm really really into. But I watched the series through once. Like it was enough that I watched it through once, but then I was like, okay, well that was a bit painful. I don't think I'm ever going to do that again. There
yeah.
was too much pain to get to the end that I didn't like. It's
It's an
not worth it.
interesting one. I don't like. I'm not as down on the ending as some people are. It was a rough ending, but I'm not as down. But I also wasn't into the show as much as some other people were. But it's definitely it may hold some sort of record for going from being like the biggest thing in pop culture to I
Most
don't know
made
that
fun of.
ending. Well, that ending was so rough that like I don't remember the last time I had someone mention it other than to talk about how bad the ending was. And
And
people love that show
yeah.
so much, and it they managed to make a season so badly they erased the original 9 seasons like out of existence.
I don't think it's how it ended so much, just that it, like the writer in me kept going, you guys are rushing this. You're not exploring this plot. Why did you do what? Okay, but that conversation died in the middle and so it was like my brain just started going into technical editing mode and I could not. Like it doesn't have to have a happy ending. And I kind of get how it was sort of building to what happened. It was just the execution of it in those last two seasons that I was like, "Oh, guys, you were done. You were done. You should have handed it to someone else. You were clearly not invested."
You were clearly checked out, moving on to your next project. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately what it was. Is the they finished the producers or creators. They were done. They wanted to do something else, and I get it after so many
Mm.
years. You would.
Yeah. And adapting media from one format to another is hard enough as it is. Then to get halfway through and be like, well, the source material's done now. Figure it out. So,
Right.
but then at the same
Yeah, it
time,
kind of the process kind of changed. The ball game changed for them. It went from something they were adapting to something they had to kind of create. I think they knew roughly what was going to happen, but they still had to create the process of how it got there.
yeah. Turns
So,
out knowing how it ends is not drawing the lines from point A to point B is a little bit harder than it looks.
yeah. Turns out maybe the authors have things in their heads that they don't realize they should tell you.
I mean, adaptations in general are rough, but then at the same time as you see a Lord of the Rings, or we were talking about before it, you go see a Dune, and you're like, no, it's even the unfilmable is filmable, but you have to obviously have some passion around it, and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and some respect for the source work. And I think you have to have respect for the source format. Like understand it's a book and almost like respect the narrative in that way and treat it that way a little bit. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah,
we're going to pretend it does.
yeah. I mean, it's tricky. Well, it's like even within like all books are not created equal because like we look at all the current. I mean, everything's an adaptation now, but just current like I can think of two current adaptations of like say like sci-fi right now. There's a Foundation series on right now, and then there's Dune the movie, and those are two very different kinds of books. Foundation, I would say, is there's a reason it had took this long to get adapted, and I think they did okay with it, but I don't know that there's a better version than what they did. But at the same time, like I could have said that about Dune, and then Denny came out and like, oh no, you can do this, and you can do it well, and it's amazing when you do it right.
There were
So
a few points where I thought they sacrificed style, like they sacrificed clarity for style, but they were just little bitty things where they were like, "Oh, let's make this look flashy," and then you kind of go, "Wait, what happened?" All right, I've pieced it together from what they're talking about now, but I wasn't sure right there. But for the most part, I thought it was amazing. There were just like a few little scenes here and there where like it was visually stunning, but not necessarily completely clear what was happening. So
I'm willing. Yeah, there was definitely a couple bits. I was
little tiny.
I was impressed at how few punches the filmmaker like Denny pulled, and since that like he did a good job of showing not telling, but the amount of times he just didn't tell at all and just expected people to figure it out. As someone who's read that book more than once,
Yeah.
I knew it was going on, but there's definitely people sitting next to me
Yeah.
who I'm like, they got it, and I'm pressed, not to like insult my friends, but I'm like,
Right.
Dune's pretty dense. There's a lot
It
happening there,
is.
and
It is.
he did. I'm willing to withhold judgment until I see the second half of it, but
I'm really looking forward to the second half. I think they absolutely caught the spirit of it. Like they caught the mood, spirit. Although all I could think every time I looked at Paul Atreides was, wait, when did Kylo Ren and Edward Scissorhands have a baby? Like he kind of, he kind of
he
looked a
definitely
little
he
bit like Kylo Ren and Edward Scissorhands had a baby.
he definitely has the hair. It's the hair. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe
I
he'll
thought
get
he
a
did
hair.
a great job, but every once in a while I was like, you really, when you make that face, I kind of expect you to throw a fit with a lightsaber.
No,
So it's just one of those little things that amused me as I observed it, but I was still enjoying the movie a lot.
it was a lot of fun. I was
I was
half in
really
the bag.
upset that we didn't get to see like the Fremen until quite a ways in.
Yeah, we definitely. I hopefully like that's. I mean, obviously that's going to be all of the second half, but
I get why
yeah,
they
a
stopped it
little
there,
bit.
though. It's a lot.
And it's I'm surprised they got as far as, I mean, because it is about the halfway point, and they did. There's a lot to that. I am curious how much of the final scene of that movie will be the start of the first book, because there's a lot that happens. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything. There's a lot that happens in that
Yeah.
final scene in the book. There's a lot more nuance, a lot more explanation that happens. So where I'm curious where the second half will pick up, but I don't know. I trust. I mean, I was half in the bag. Not only a big fan of the book, but Denis Villeneuve. I mean, I loved his take on Blade Runner. I loved Arrival. I like a lot of his books. So, I mean, a lot of his movies, not books,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I love the Dune. I liked the first 3 Dune books. After that, it kind of got so far removed from what I really liked about the first book and the second. Like, it kind of sort of strayed past the parts that I was interested in, but I can still just like look at it and go, this is really brilliant, you know?
I'll go as far as the fourth one. After the fourth one, it gets
It gets
problematic
very
in a lot of
far
ways.
removed. It just sort of, you kind of go, wait, but wait. It gets very confusing after a while. But the first and the second one I really enjoyed. And I liked the third one. There were there's some sadness to the second and third ones, and the first one is my favorite though. I think it's amazing.
It is so good. It is one of my favorite books of all time.
I mean, I really feel like in many ways it's like the sci-fi version of Lord of the Rings, and just like the depth of the world and how many details there are. It's just vast. He put in so much, like the social political things, and just
Yeah,
it's crazy.
we're gonna talk about the environment and deconstruct,
Yeah,
religion, and we're gonna
yeah,
talk about, politics, and meanwhile we're gonna tell a really cool, epic, hero's
yeah.
journey story.
Look at those authors that do that, and I'm like, I really want to be that good, and I'm gonna try really, really hard, but also I want to play Dragon Age.
Listen, I gotta find some time. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's possible that Frank Herbert, if Star Wars: The Old Republic and Dragon Age were around, he would not have been able to write Dune. Too many distractions. Too many other cool things to do.
I mean, I don't know. I've written 4 books now. I'm working on at least 4 more. I think I'm doing all right, despite the need to game every once in a while.
It's fair enough. What's your game of your poison of choice these days when you're not up against the deadline?
I have 3 favorites, and it sort of depends on what the escapism goal is. If I want to play an MMO with my friends, I love Star Wars: The Old Republic. I know a lot of people bash it and don't give it, in my opinion, its due. Love that game. I'm I love being an Imperial sniper. It's so much more fun to be an Imperial sniper than to be a good guy. Though she is light side. And then if it's just something that I just want to play, I really love the Dragon Age games. Insurrection is not Insurrection. Ugh, I'm thinking of Star Trek. The last one.
Inquisition.
Inquisition. Yeah. Inquisition is my all, like, I love it. It's pretty. The game is so pretty. And I love the stories. So typically those go with BioWare. And then if I want something just completely mindless where nothing's trying to kill me and I can just stare at the screen and make things pretty, I'll play House Flipper. But that's usually just like I have to decompress. I have squeezed every drop of thought from my brain. This is what we're doing. But usually
Fair
I
enough.
like the games that have stories to them.
I think that's one of the things that people didn't slept on with the Old Republic. Like, I will admit, I haven't played it in years, but I remember when it first came out, and the fact that it was an MMO, but you still had at least early level, you had your own personal story, and it felt
Yeah,
like it was you actually were a real character. Whereas a lot of them, you're
yeah,
supposed to be. A lot of MMOs fail at that, where you're supposed to be this great big hero, but you're like, no, I'm just one of a
yeah.
thousand other people who do the exact same thing. So it did a good
I
job
mean,
of
it's
making you
kind of
feel like
fallen
a big
into
deal.
that. Yeah, they kind of have fallen into the sort of one size fits all stories once you get past the vanilla stuff. But I'm a writer, so my character has vast amounts of headcanon. You know, so much headcanon. I can tell you who her kids are, who her grandkids are, what she does after the stuff. My co-author of the Fey Touch Chronicles, she actually plays as well, and so we do the exact same thing in that game that we do in our writing, where we'll actually create like couples, and then we just run them together so that we can create the stories as we go. you know? So,
Listen, there's nothing wrong with some awesome role play, no matter the medium. So
and then I had the pleasure of meeting Troy Baker, who voices Theron Shawn, at a con, and he was really, really sweet. Insanely tall. I'm short. I'm only like 5'1.5", and he's extremely tall. I thought he was like up on something, and then he came around the table, and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm a hobbit. It's just so I got a selfie with him, and it's like this. It's just nuts. But he was really cool and nice.
that's definitely something I over the last year or so I've missed is I'm excited. I'm ready for the return of the convention.
As I had planned, the plan was when the whole trilogy was out, I was going to start doing the con circuit. And then I got Boundless out, and then the world went nuts. And no Comic Cons. But they're coming back. I'm going to be doing my first guest appearance at Tolcon in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's like a play on Tolkien and Tulsa. So I'm going to be doing that one as a guest. And then I think we're still nailing down details, but it's pretty much set in stone. We're going to be having a table at Smallville Comic Con in Hutchinson, Kansas. So
Smallville. I have been to Smallville Comic Con. That is a good one.
it's a good one, and
They're
it
at
hasn't
the
been
state
around that long.
fairgrounds. Yeah, we
Yeah.
Project Nerd. I think we've been there twice, but I went I think the last time before the pandemic. I think we were there, and it was for being not a lot of people who are not from Kansas have been to Hutchinson, Kansas, or it's the home of the state fair and one of my favorite places in the entire world, the Kansas Cosmosphere and Space Center. For those who aren't aware, if you ever want to
Oh
see
yeah.
cool space stuff, go to the
Oh
Cosmosphere.
yeah.
But Smallville
And then
Con
they
is a
also
really
have the
cool
salt
con.
mines, which are really cool.
A lot of cool stuff down in the salt mines. Yeah,
Yeah, like a Batman suit, Mr. Freeze's suit. I think one of there's a costume from the Matrix in there. So it's cool. I really like the salt mines, and I'm claustrophobic and don't like to be underground, but I like going to the salt mines. I don't know why.
yeah.
Apparently
I haven't
that's okay.
I haven't been to Hutchinson in quite a while. I probably haven't been to Hutchinson since the last time I went to Smallville Comic Con, but it is definitely, if you're ever in Kansas, the largest collection of space memorabilia outside the Smithsonian and cool stuff in the salt mines and a really cool Comic Con. So
And it has not been around that long, and it's been a successful one. It's really growing. It's not I wouldn't say it's one of the big boys yet, but I think it has potential to become one. I'm excited to get to have a booth there. It was the very first Smallville Comic Con, and I met an author named Neo Edmond. He was one of their guests, and I told him, "Oh man, you're doing what I want to do. You're writing books, and you're going to cons and everything." And he just looks at me and he goes, "So do it." And my brain just went,
oh,
oh, right. Because I already had the idea for Soulbound and I just wasn't doing it. And he's told me, we're friends on Facebook now, and he's told me, he's like, you're one of the few people I know who has actually done that after someone told him to. I was like, well, I don't know. It just seemed the thing to do.
so
So
it's just
this
like
will
a
be,
decision I can make. I didn't. It's sometimes.
yeah.
And here's the thing. It's one of those things where it seems obvious in hindsight, but sometimes you have to have someone tell you those things. Someone
Yeah,
has to
it's like,
unlock. Someone has to turn the key.
yeah, it's like they just have to take that little block that's been in front of you and go, no, no, you can keep going. You know?
There's
So
stuff
it's
on the
kind of
other
cool
side.
because the first one is what got me to do it, and now I finally get to go and have my books there, and I'm excited about that.
It's exciting. So TollCon and
Smallville Comic
Smallville
Con.
Comic-Con getting signed copies of the books. What's
Yeah.
your prior to this, what's your favorite, what's the best con you've ever been to?
Oh gosh. I went to one Wizarding World Con in Chicago and I got to meet Billy Boyd, who is
Wow.
my very favorite Hobbit. And that was amazing. And I also got to meet a friend and she was really I can't see very well, so she was really, really great at helping me get around. And I'm really, really excited for when they come back because Richard Madden has now been in a Marvel movie and I'm like, that means you'll be at cons. And
He
I will
will.
meet you dressed as Cinderella. Because love the live action Cinderella.
That's exciting. Yeah, he will. I guess he has to, pretty much has to now. So
Yeah, I think they're pretty contractually obligated. Once you're in Marvel, they kind of own you a little bit, I
yeah, you
think.
gotta, I think in the long run probably worth it, but yeah, there's definitely something going on there.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that was one of my favorite con experiences. I've been to Planet Comic Con and I got to meet Danielle Panabaker, I think is how her last name is pronounced, but she's in the WE's or whatever it is. She's in the TV series The Flash. So,
Oh, nice.
so I got to go. Killer Frost is who she plays. So I got to meet her and I shoved a book in her hand. I also shoved a book in Billy Boyd's hand. I'm just like, here, a present for you.
There you go.
It's like my thing.
Oh yeah,
So, and
Planet
Richard
Comic Con.
Madden is
That's
sort of a mental casting choice for one of the characters. So I'm gonna be like, this is a present for you.
There we go. So when Song of Souls is finally on the big screen, and Richard Madden hopefully will be available.
Fingers crossed.
Crossed.
I would love it.
Yeah. Planet Comic Con that's another one of those ones where I remember, like, Planet Comic Con was definitely, like, I mean, I live in Kansas City, but it was Project Nerd's hometown show for many a
Cool.
year, so we've been to many of them. But I remember when it was just a little tiny thing in a convention center, and now it's
Biggest one in the central.
so big. So
Yeah,
hopefully we
I
can get
heard
some
that
other.
it's like the biggest Comic Con in this area.
I believe that. I mean, I remember when it went from being nothing to huge. Now, granted, the last couple of years may have changed some things, but I would bet by
Yeah,
next year it'll be back. I'm curious if cons will struggle to come back, or if the first next round of them will just be the biggest thing. They'll be
I
bigger than
think
ever. People just need to get out of their
I
houses
kind
and
of
do
think
stuff.
right. I kind of think they're gonna be, if not bigger, they'll at least be the same size. I think because people love them. I love them. I love going and cosplaying and it's like you can walk in and you go, oh, "My people. These are my people." So,
That part is awesome. And I think, and like, obviously you're going to be a guest at a couple shows. Like, it didn't, when I first started going to cons, it wasn't as big of a thing, but I'm glad that more and more shows have been inviting author guests. Like, that's one of, like, some of the best experience I've ever had at cons was not meeting celebrities or seeing cool cosplay or buying cool stuff, which is all part of it, but it was getting, like, there's one of these shelves behind me is only books that are signed books, and they pretty much only all been signed at comic conventions. So
uh,
that that's my
yeah.
favorite thing.
The celebrities, like the actors, actresses, there's so many people there to see them that you're just kind of shoved through like it's a little bit of like a cattle shoot. So you don't really get as much of the one-on-one. I'm really excited about being an actual guest because I'm like, I'm going to be able to hang out backstage with the people and stare awkwardly at them. I'll have an opportunity to be genuinely cool, and I know I'm going to fail epically.
Listen,
Not gonna.
it's a Comic Con. I think if the bar is pretty low to clear for being, as long as you're somewhat socially functional, I think you've cleared most of the bars already. So
Yeah. We'll see. I'm
and you get
excited.
and guests and artists aren't weird or awkward. They're just eccentric.
Yes. Yes. And I'm already eccentric, so it's fine. I already fit right in. I collect swords.
Listen, there's plenty. I mean, that's the best. I mean, there's the best place to find a new sword is a lot of times a comic convention. I know more than a few people that have gotten them there.
Expensive at cons.
Listen,
I
so
can find
expensive.
them.
Listen, the number of times I have had to stop myself from spending so much money at the Ultra Sabers booth to buy a really cool lightsaber is more times than once. So
My Ultra Saber's just over there.
Listen, I have one of the Project Nerd bigwigs, my best friend, one of my really good friends, Iggy. He has more than one Ultra Saber. I have managed to. Here's the thing: it's not like I didn't spend that money. I just spent it on things other than Ultra Sabers. One of these days, I'm gonna break down and buy the whole thing with the lights and the sounds and stuff. But me not
Mine
buying a
doesn't have the
400,
sound.
yeah, me not buying a $400 lightsaber doesn't mean I didn't. I mean, you can see there's a bunch of movie posters behind me. These were as much as some of these were as much as a lightsaber. I just spent them on other things. So,
and those things hurt when they hit you. People are like, "Oh, it can't be that bad." I'm like, "Yes, it can. It can be very bad when it hits you." We have had a few cracked bones among our group. There was once I thought somebody was trying to break in, and I have swords. Did I go for the sword? No, I went and grabbed the lightsaber. And it's night, and I'm small, and you'd think that my instinct would be grab the phone and call, the police. No, it was grab the lightsaber and then go dramatically to the living room and not turn on the light, just turn on the lightsaber. So I came around the edge and just turned it on. And you better believe in my brain, I heard the noise and the Darth Vader theme.
yes.
And then I don't think there was anyone, but I felt very cool for a minute.
Yeah, I think that's a totally reasonable response. I think anyone in that situation would have done the same. So if you, I have a lightsaber, otherwise, there you go.
I thought it through. I could have accidentally stabbed myself with a sword, but the lightsaber, he's gonna take one look. Whoever it was would take one look and go, "Oh, this isn't gonna hurt me." But yes, they can hurt. They're stunt grade. It hurts a lot. It's no joke when you get hit by an ultra saber.
No, stunt swords are no joke. They're not going to kill you, but they're still going to sting a little bit.
Yeah. I've been hit. I got hit in the head with one of my brother's ultra sabers. We were goofing off. I mean, we weren't goofing off. We were trying to kill each other with ultra sabers, and he got me right there. Yeah, huge old bump, sore for days.
They are impressive, and if nothing else, those hilts themselves are a good 4 or 5 pounds a piece. You can just hit someone with those and be done with it.
Yeah, it's impressive how balanced they are too. They're actually well made. They're really nicely balanced, and so that you swing them and move them, and they just they go, and they're really fun to swing around.
I've played with them more than once, and my friends have them as well. So I definitely, one of these days, I'm going to break down at a con and buy one. That, or I'll finally find the time and the money to go to Galaxy's Edge and spend even more on a Disney lightsaber.
I got to go to Galaxy's Edge in September. Ultra sabers are better quality.
Better?
If
really?
You're going to spend that much money, spend it on. The Disney ones are toy. They're meant more to be toys. The Ultra sabers are stunt.
Are props, yeah.
Yeah, they're good.
Was Galaxy's other than the lightsaber, was it everything you hoped it could be and more? Because I really, really want to go.
And it used to be really, really hard to get on Rise of the Resistance. You had to get up super early and get a boarding pass, and they go in seconds. This is how it went down. My friend and I got up. You could start at 6. We both had our phones ready. Before 6:01, every boarding pass was gone. We didn't think we got one. But I'm a sniper on Star Wars The Old Republic, and I have my little sniper finger going. And she's like, "Oh, they're gone." I was like, "Oh, man." And then I kind of looked at my phone and went, boarding pass 20. Boarding group 20. I got it. And it was amazing. It was like you left Disney World and stepped into Star Wars, and then you went on this amazing ride. It was so cool. And Galaxy's Edge was cool. And I tried the blue milk. It was not horrible. It was just, a one and done. Maybe if I'd added the rum, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I was like, oh, it's already blue milk. I'm not sure I should add rum to it. I'm not sure about this. We'll just do the base. And then I'm going back in January with my brother because our birthdays are really close to each other. So we decided we were going to do a joint Disney World birthday trip at Disney World. It's been a long day. Like I said, I got woke up with an earthquake this morning.
Yes.
And that's not a euphemism. It was a legit earthquake.
For those who are aware, we have earthquakes in Kansas. It is a thing that happens. So
rarely, and we don't quite know what to do with them because it is not that common. So we just
tornadoes, thunderstorms, all that stuff. We're fine. Earthquake,
Yeah.
everyone's just like, I don't even know what's happening right now.
Right. Tornadoes, we go out and look to see if we can see it. You know,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
was it here?
You hear the siren,
Oh,
like
the
you
sky looks fine. We're fine.
definitely know someone who grew up in the Midwest, Kansas. When the siren goes off, you go immediately outside as opposed to the
Go to the
basement.
porch to look and see if you can see the tornado. But an earthquake hits and we just freeze and we're like, what do we do? We have no idea.
Fair enough.
If a really bad one ever hits, we're all gonna die.
Yep.
Let's just be real. We're all gonna die unless someone like lived in a state that has them frequently. They might live, but the rest of us dead.
We didn't build any of this to withstand that sort of thing.
No,
It's gonna go poorly
no.
for everyone.
It's gonna go. Yeah, it's not gonna be good.
Well,
idea for a new book.
Yeah, there you go. Having had a long day, I've probably kept you here long enough. But before I let you go, we do need to talk a little bit more because I feel like we've gotten on to fun nerd talk. If people want to jump in and they want to read the Song of Souls trilogy, or better yet, first they want to dive into the Twisted Path, what do they need to do? Where can we find all your great books?
Well, all of them can be found in paperback and ebook form on Amazon. Twisted Path is actually on a lot more platforms for ebook. I'm just sort of working out how to get it into the other ones, but the trilogy hasn't been transferred over yet. But Amazon has everything. They can get them there, and if they're in I'm actually going to be in an event this weekend, so if they're in Wichita, Kansas, they can go to meet the authors, and I'll be there, and then I'll be at Smallville Comic Con and TollCon, so they can just buy a copy and get it signed. But yeah, I think it's on. I don't even know the list for Twisted Path. It's that many different places for the ebook, and it's available for pre-order. By the time this comes out, it might be available for actually out. But that's where they can find them. I also have a website where I link to them. There are currently hardbacks on Barnes and Noble for the trilogy, but that's going to be changing soon because I'm not really happy with how that's working out. But they can also, I know Books A Million will order them. Barnes and Noble will order the paperbacks as well, I believe. There's several bookstores that will. But yeah, they can get those, and if they're in Salina, they can get them at Ad Astra. So.
Listen, if you're driving on I-70, like many people have done, there's a lot of complaints about how boring I-70 is, but it's going to go through Salina. There is a really cool bookstore there called Ad Astra, and you can find them there.
And it's a cute little town. They could stop at Cozy's Inn and then Blue Sky Brewery.
Get some burgers. There you go.
Yeah. And then Sunday I will be streaming with my gamer friend and her on Twitch, and her name is this is all fairly new, so I'm going to sound really stupid for a minute. But she plays under the name Everwin, which actually comes from one of my books because she was the inspiration for one of the characters. So I'm going to be joining her to do some gaming on Sunday, streaming. We'll see how that goes. I'll probably fall off a cliff. It's fine.
There you go. It makes for entertaining watching.
Me just falling off a cliff. It's great. It'll be perfect.
There we go. So for Twisted Path, Song of Souls trilogy, go pick them up where ebooks and or paperbacks are available. And then this coming year on the con circuit, TollCon in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Smallville, and Hutchinson. Get your book signed. It's going to be, but definitely dive in and try these books out. Christen, thanks so much for joining us on the Nerdcast.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Awesome. We will hopefully get to talk to you again soon, but that's the thing. Keep an eye out for the Fae Touch Chronicles next year sometime, probably.
Yes, next year, and I could probably convince my co-author to come as well if we came back on the show.
Awesome. Well, Christen, thanks for joining us, and everyone, once again, always thanks for tuning into the Project Nerd Podcast Network and the Nerdcast in particular. Always available where podcasts are found or at project-nerd.com. Christen, thanks again for joining us. Have a great evening.